Voluntary liquidation versus compulsory liquidation. What's the difference? When a company needs to close down, the process usually involves liquidation. But did you know there are two main types of liquidation, voluntary and compulsory? Now, while both lead to the dissolution of a company, they differ significantly in terms of how they're initiated, who controls them, and how quickly they progress. Let's explore these two approaches and what they involve. Voluntary liquidation is a process initiated by the company itself. This means it's the directors or shareholders who decide to wind up the business. One of the key advantages here is that the company retains a degree of control over the process. For example, directors can choose the liquidator who will manage the sale of assets and the distribution of funds. Voluntary liquidation is also typically quicker than compulsory liquidation because it avoids court proceedings, making it a more streamlined option. There are two main types of voluntary liquidation to be aware of. Creditors voluntary liquidation, or CVL. This is used when a company is insolvent and can't pay its debts. A liquidator is appointed to sell the company's assets, with the proceeds going to the creditors. And then there's a members voluntary liquidation, MVL. This applies when a company is solvent but no longer needs to operate. In this case, a liquidator winds up the company's affairs and distributes any surplus funds to the shareholders. In this scenario, the court takes control of the process, appointing a liquidator to oversee the sale of assets and distribution of funds. Since court proceedings are involved, compulsory liquidation tends to be slower and more expensive than voluntary liquidation. It can also be more damaging to a company's reputation, as it's often seen as a last resort. Let's look at the key differences between voluntary and compulsory liquidation. Number one is initiation. Voluntary liquidation is started by the company's directors and shareholders, while compulsory liquidation is started or initiated by an unpaid creditor through the courts. Control. In voluntary liquidation, the company retains some control by selecting the liquidator, whereas in compulsory liquidation, the court oversees the process. Speed and cost. Voluntary liquidation is generally faster and less expensive, as it avoids court fees, whereas compulsory liquidation takes longer and incurs higher costs. Reputation. Voluntary liquidation is often less damaging to a company's reputation compared to the public nature of compulsory liquidation. To understand which option is right for your company, voluntary liquidation is usually the preferred choice for directors when the company is insolvent but still able to wind up its affairs in an orderly manner. Compulsory liquidation is often a last resort, typically pursued when a company simply can't pay its debts or if there are concerns about fraudulent activity. If your company is facing financial difficulties, it's essential to seek professional advice. A qualified insolvency practitioner can help you understand your options, explain the costs involved, and guide you through the process while protecting your interests. At First Business Rescue, we're here to help you navigate these decisions and find the best path forward. So contact us today for a confidential conversation about your situation and how we can help. In order to take the next step, somewhere around this video, there will be a button or a link with our contact details. You can either contact us online or simply give us a call today. We're here to help.